Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. We are going to get started in just a minute, so please hang tight. We'll get started in just a minute. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience and waiting. We were just giving it a few minutes to allow as many people as possible to join the webinar this morning. Welcome, everyone, to our series of webinars. This morning, we are going to be focusing on teaching assistant preparation and English language proficiency exam requirements. This is just for new international graduate students coming to UC San Diego. So I am joined this morning by my colleagues Martha Stacklin and Erilyn Heinrichsen, both from the Teaching and Learning Commons here on campus. They're going to be providing a wealth of information to all of you to help you understand TA requirements and English proficiency requirements for teaching at UC San Diego. My name is Gabriella Hoffman. I'm the Assistant Director for International Programs here at the International Students and Programs Office. And I'm here to support all of you, answer questions. All of us will be available online afterwards to answer questions. So do know that that support is provided today. So here's a quick overview of our agenda for this morning. We're going to be quickly recapping and going over the International Student Programs Office, or ISPO as we are known. Then we're going to move on to discussing the English language program for international instructors. We'll talk about the English language certification exam, as well as teaching support. Then we'll go over some approaching deadlines and reminders that you should all be aware of that are coming up in the next few months. And as I mentioned, we'll leave the webinar open for Q&A at the end to answer all the questions that you have. So first, a little bit of information about the International Students and Programs Office. Many of you may have already come into contact with our office because we are the office that issues all of your visa paperwork to come to the United States and begin your studies here. But we don't only offer those services, that the immigration visa paperwork side of things. We also offer a whole host of programs and events, advising services throughout the entire academic year and the summer. So if you ever have any questions about your status in the United States, about your visa, or if you want to get involved in programs, cross-cultural programs on campus, we strongly recommend you come and talk to us. We are centrally located on campus, right in the middle of campus. Once you become familiar with the campus, you'll know we're right off of Library Walk. We are open throughout the summer, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So when you get here this summer, you can come in and talk to us, and we'll be happy to see you and speak to you. Okay, so before we get started, I just wanted to familiarize you with the control panel in your Zoom webinar software. So as I mentioned, we are going to be having a live question and answer session at the end of the webinar. I do ask that you hold your questions until the end of the webinar because we are covering quite a bit of information, and that information might be covered with the questions that you have. So please hold those to the end, but if you want to ask those questions, you can use the Q&A button on the control panel strip that you have on your screen. Input your question, and at the end, we are going to be reading out questions out loud so that the whole audience can benefit from the answers. Do know that we are not going to be identifying people by name or anything like that. We're just going to be answering, asking questions that might be beneficial to the group. So just be aware of that. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Martha Stacklin to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Gabby, and hello. I want to say welcome to UCSD. I'm here, and I'll be eager to answer your questions this morning. So what you see here are some pictures of my wonderful students that I've had over the last year, and under the ELPII, that's my photo, so that's me. And let's move on to the facts about the ELPII. First of all, the English language program was established in 1987. And that was because of a state resolution that requires us to ensure the language skills of anyone teaching are ready, and if you need support, we will provide it. So the English language certification exam is that test that complies with the resolution. I'll be talking about that in more detail soon. And essentially, this program has supported thousands of international graduate students since that time in both teaching and presenting. So what is the ELPII? Well, it's based in the Engaged Teaching Hub of the Teaching and Learning Commons, and it does implement the Graduate Division policy on the employment of international graduate TAs. And the ELPII offers language, culture, and teaching support services for both faculty and international TAs. Our services include a pre-fall bridge program. We do this for physics, chemistry, and math, and that's because they have a TA requirement that begins in fall quarter. I also provide English for teaching classes, as well as workshops throughout the year. They're offered every quarter. You can sign up and attend, or you can sign up and not attend, but we would rather you attended. And just to get you there, we do provide snacks. Okay, we also have consultations, observations, and feedback. So this is a #1 question I get from students who reach me, and that is, who should test? Can I test? Am I required to test? So from this table, we at UCSD accept 3 different types of English admission scores, from TOEFL, IELTS, and the Pearson Test of English, the PTE. So from this table, you can see that anyone with a TOEFL score of 28 to 30, an IELTS score of 8.5 to 9, or a PTE of 83 to 90, you are green lighted into the TA-ship, which means you don't have to take the English language certification exam. Those in the range from 23 to 27 TOEFL, from 7 to 8 IELTS, And from 76 to 82 in Pearson, you qualify to take the English language certification exam. Below that 23, we're going to ask you to develop your skills before you take the exam. And this comes from extensive data that tells us the students who have the highest chance of qualifying to TA are those in the 23 to 27 range, the 7 to 8 range, and the 76 to 82. We want always good news from the ELCE. So we look forward to passing students because they are qualified with their skill set in taking this test. So what do we test on the ELCE? It's fluency, pronunciation accuracy, listening and question handling, the use of general and technical vocabulary, grammatical accuracy, and organizational clarity. These are all the skills you need for being a successful TA, especially with English language. Now, your performance skills are assessed, but they're not scored. The reason that they're assessed but not scored is if you have great performance skills, eye contact, board work, and presentation manner. Presentation manner means that you're confident, that you engage in conversation with us, that you interact. And if those are great, they really help us to make a decision about your qualifications for teaching. So the English language certification exam, it's a 10 to 15 minute live oral English exam. This means that it's unrehearsed and unscripted. You won't know what questions you're going to be asked before the test because frankly, our undergraduate students will ask us questions we're not necessarily expecting to answer. So you have to be ready for that. So the test, it's an interview. It's usually in 2 parts. Some departments will modify the test to accommodate what they need from a TA. For example, in physics, the test is in 3 parts. But it's still the same time frame. So it's usually in 2 parts. You will know when your department tells you about the test. The first part of the test is a general warm-up. That's to help you calm down, and those questions are all about you, and luckily you're the expert of you, so you'll know how to respond to those questions. The second part is the tricky part. That's when you stand up, you become our TA, and the faculty member, who's a member of the department you want a TA for, that person will ask you a typical question that a student in the class you want a TA would ask you. And that's when you'll go to the board and teach us the information. When we've heard enough of your English to make a recommendation, even if you haven't finished, that's when we'll stop the test. And that's critical. When we stop you, you should know that it's not because we're testing your knowledge. We're testing your English, okay? So here are some frequently asked questions. What will I be asked? Well, I can't tell you that. It's a test, okay? Remember, unrehearsed, unpracticed. We want to hear your real English, especially if you TA at 8 a.m., because that's real English, okay? So what can I know about the technical question? Let me tell you this. The faculty rep will ask you it. It's typically a question. If it's not in your field area, let us know. We'll change the question, but you can't change the question 10 times, all right? I'm just saying. And we will ask you questions again. You're going to teach us the information, but again, this is not a technical test, a content knowledge test. It's a language exam. So when we stop you, don't panic. It means we've heard enough to make an assessment. So more questions. I'm usually asked these before the test, and get ready, there are a lot coming, okay? Who schedules the test? The hiring department schedules the test. You do not. The hiring department will contact you and let you know you are a candidate. They will let you know when the test will be offered. There will be a schedule, and you will pick the time that works for you, okay? So who will test you? A language assessor. It may be me. I do a lot of assessing, and it's also a faculty representative of the department. But don't worry, that person is very kind. We are both welcoming. We want you to feel comfortable and confident for this test. And what should you expect during the exam? As mentioned, we're friendly, welcoming assessors. So we want you to be as relaxed as possible. And what happens if you're nervous? It happens a lot. Our students are nervous. This is a test. It is normal. And just know we'll do what we can to help you feel calm, okay? How can you pass the test? Well, relax, perform well, practice. You might want to review basic information in your discipline for the course you want to TA. Look at the topics. And remember, this isn't a content knowledge test, it's a language test. And what happens if you don't pass the test? Well, you have an opportunity to develop your English, and you can take it again. Now, this varies from department to department. They will tell you during orientation what that's about, but it's also on their websites. So check with your department policy. And here's scoring information. The language scale ranges from a 0.0 to a 4.0, most like the grade point average here that you'll experience for your classes at UCSD. Hopefully you'll all experience the 4.0. And the lowest rating is a 0.0, 4.0 is the highest. And by the way, getting a 4.0 on this test does not mean that you are fluent in English. It just means you demonstrated the highest rating we're looking for in teaching in English. To qualify to TA, you have to achieve a minimum score of a 2.5 on this exam. That's qualifying to TA. That doesn't mean you passed the test. So qualifying to TA means you can accept a TA offer, but you need additional training in language skills and teaching skills for the TA-ship. So here's what it looks like in their recommendation. So on the ELCE score, if you get a 3.5 or 4.0, that's a green light, go, excellent for you. You can accept an offer. You do not need any additional training. You do not need to test again. Then we have a conditional certification. That's like a yellow warning light. It's a 3.0 to 3.4. Usually in this category, you need to polish your pronunciation skills. I have to say the #1 reason why you get a conditional and not a green light pass is because you speak too quickly without pause. Remember, learners need to process what you're saying. So speaking too quickly doesn't allow them to digest the information. If you get a conditional, yes, you can accept an offer, but yes, you have to take a course, and no, you will not test again, but you will have a final in the English course. The provisional pass, that's the minimum range of the 2.5 to 2.9. Yes, you can accept an offer. Yes, you must take a course. And yes, you will be tested again. Okay? The red light district is from the 0.0 to 2.4. We have two different categories there. The last category, that last fail, it's for an applicant who's been tested who has no TA requirement. So no, you don't accept a TA offer. No, you cannot participate in the language courses. And yes, you can test again, but you have to take other courses outside of the English language program. The fail otherwise for yes, English program course required, it's because you have a TA requirement and your department needs you to qualify as soon as possible. Okay? So are any other skills assessed? Yes, they are. We have communication skills that are assessed. I mentioned this earlier. So we are going to ask you to demonstrate great communication skills because they help you to be clear. They help us all to be clear, okay? And the other scores that are not, that are assessed but not scored, are the eye contact, board work, and speaker manner. But by demonstrating excellent communication skills, you can positively affect the overall recommendation rating. However, note that poor communication skills, meaning you haven't really spent any time developing your public speaking abilities, they do not affect your recommendation rating for language. But if they're great, they help. So what happens when the test is done? You get to leave, yay. The faculty member and the language assessor stay, and that's where we have a conversation. For hiring purposes, the hiring department will let you know the recommendation almost immediately after the test. However, the department will not know the details of the recommendation. They'll just let you know whether you've qualified or not. You will receive the recommendation information via email, but that's several weeks after the test, and that's because we have one person handling all of that. That would be me. And I'm extremely busy, but we hope to get you the info as soon as possible. And these are a few of my wonderful students. Look how happy they are, how well they look as teachers in the classroom, confident, ready to teach successfully. They have passed the test, and so will you. We will support you. We are eager to have you TA, and we're eager to help you get there. And we will handle your questions after my colleague, Erilyn, will talk about the teaching and learning commons.
All right, thank you, Martha, and hello, everybody. As Martha said, welcome to UC San Diego. So Martha mentioned that all of what she's been talking about so far is part of the teaching and learning commons. So I wanted to just mention that because there is more there than just, I mean, Martha's programs are phenomenal and probably the best in the teaching and learning commons, but there's more there as well. So this is a really unique structure that doesn't exist on many campuses, many universities in the United States. But we have this umbrella that includes the Engaged Teaching Hub, which is where Martha and myself work, and I'll talk more about some of our other programs in a moment. But it also includes support for students. So this means when you are teaching, if you have students that are really struggling in writing or really struggling with the content, you don't have to fix them. You can help them, you can support them, you can guide them. But we have tutoring services for undergraduates, and we have supplemental instruction, which is sort of like guided group work for the students. So that takes a little bit of pressure off you. You still want to teach them and help them, but you don't have to you don't have to reach every single person. There's additional support. I also wanted to point out the Writing and Critical Expression Hub, because they do have phenomenal services for graduate students. They have graduate writing consultants, as well as graduate writing workshops that you can go and get support in your writing. So not just as an educator, but as a graduate student. So I highly, highly encourage you to check them out. And you'll find all of these on commons.ucsd.edu. If you go to I think it's the academic support portion and go down to writing, there are services there for graduate students. So, and they're free, that's right. So they do fill up quickly, but I highly recommend you take advantage of that. All right, so you're gonna hear me refer to this term instructional assistants a lot, or IAs, and you'll be confused maybe because you're like, I'm supposed to TA, I don't know what IA is. You'll hear IA a lot because that's our umbrella term that sort of encompasses teaching assistants, which is what you'll probably be applying for, instructional apprentices, which for some programs, people are taking a course at the same time as being a TA, and they're called instructional apprentices, tutors, and readers. So it's sort of an all-encompassing term. So but for the sake of simplicity, IA equals TA, so don't worry about that. All right, so let's say you've applied to your IA positions through a department. We can't help you with that part, unfortunately, but seek out those positions that you're interested in and qualified for. You apply to those, and you are approved for your role. So you've passed the test with Martha, or maybe you didn't have to take it. The next step is, how do you prepare for that role? So we have a number of things to help you prepare. The first you'll probably receive is departmental training, hopefully. There's some variation in departments here on campus, but a lot of the departments have phenomenal TA training. So that might come before the quarter, it might come during the quarter, but there should be some sort of training within your department. And the online course for new IAs will come within your first week or so of being an IA or TA. So this online course is meant to be really a support for you. It's required for all new IAs, not just international students, but everyone who's going to be an IA. And it really talks about the fact that you're going from this role as an undergrad to being a leader in the classroom. So there's a lot of issues that come with that, including how do you be a professional? How do you be a leader in the classroom? How can you promote learning through diversity? So using the assets that your students bring to the class to help your teaching. How do you work with students with disabilities to support their learning in the class? And what does it mean to foster academic integrity? So instead of focusing on cheating, how can you actually support your students to have this integrity when it comes to academics? And these, we hope, will be really useful for you, where there'll be interactive online modules that you can take. All right, so again, the departmental training might come before the quarter, it might come during, but it's going to vary by department a bit. And that being said, we have some great Engaged Teaching support through the Engaged Teaching Hub that both can supplement the departmental training, or if you feel like you want more, then it can also not be in place of, but if there isn't much in your department, we can help you out. So there's going to be a new IA teaching symposium that'll be right after a required UAW or union meeting, which you'll probably hear about. It's the day before classes start. And we'll have a few workshops there that might really be of interest to you. Your department might or might not ask you to go to that, but whether or not they ask you to, you're allowed to. We'd love to have you. And that's really focused on getting skills to handle your first day as an IA. We also have workshops throughout the quarter. So these are really focused on different skills that would be useful in teaching. So there's a little bit on, sort of having confidence in the classroom, but a lot of it too is focused on strategies that you can use to actually not have to talk as much if you don't want to, but to get the students involved in the learning process. So rather than standing up and lecturing to them during the entire discussion section, skills to get them thinking and help them learn the information so that they have better questions to ask you as their guide in the learning. We also offer one-on-one teaching consultations that are, again, not so much focused on language, but really focused on anything related to teaching, whether that's interacting with students, getting students to stay awake during class, whether it's how to prepare a rubric or how to communicate with faculty. We have graduate teaching consultants who are grad students just like yourselves that have a lot of experience in teaching and a lot of training and are happy to talk with you. All right, sorry, that was like a mile a minute. I need to learn to talk slower. I need to take Martha's course. But I do want to, before we take questions, or whatever's next, I do want to just give a shout out for those that will be testing with Martha or with anyone else. And then if you're taking a class with Martha, you are in the best hands possible. There is no program like this at UC San Diego or really nationwide. So you're coming into a really good place, and you should definitely not stress about this. If anything, really look forward to the chance to interact with Martha, and hopefully with us too. But yeah, all right.
Great, thank you so much, Erilyn and Martha. And I just want to echo Erilyn's words that we are so grateful for the tremendous resources that we have on campus here to support all of you. So we hope that information was helpful. Before we open up to questions and answers, I just wanted to go over a few upcoming deadlines unrelated to TA requirements that I just wanted to run by you. For any of those students who have not applied for your visa documents yet, if you do require an I-20 for your F1 visa or a DS 2019 for your J1 visa, make sure you apply via the iPortal now. The deadline is August 1st to submit your documents. So please go ahead and do that now at iportal.ucsd.edu. Another reminder, our next webinar coming up is going to be on June 25th, and this one is going to focus on obtaining your visa for the US, entry into the US, travel preparation, and orientation information. So look out for an email from our office. We will be sending that out shortly, so you can sign up for that webinar. July 15th, this is the deadline for all students, incoming students, to submit their tuberculosis information to the Student Health Center. So please be sure you do that. I know sometimes this documentation can take a long time to get in various different countries, so just be sure you upload that information by July 15th. Again, as I mentioned, August 1st is the deadline to submit your iPortal request for your visa documents. And then finally, on September 22nd is the International Student Welcome Fest. More information will be coming soon on our website, but we just wanted to make you aware of those dates. For graduate students, of course, your graduate division orientation is on September 10th and 11th. Information about those dates will go out directly from the graduate division. So you have several different orientations, plus your department orientations, a lot of information coming to you in early September, but we'll keep you updated on all of those dates. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at our questions that we've received and begin answering those. So hopefully you can stick around a little bit longer to hear those answers.
Hello, this is Martha, and I'm seeing lots of questions pouring in now. Let me see if I can go back to the top, because it was a very typical question here. So I know it was the first question was about the 28 to 30 range. You know, we've done extensive data correlation work, and what we know about a speaking subscore of 28 to 30 is that these students 100% of the time pass the ELCE and qualify directly to TA. And that's why we know we don't want to see you for a test. Does that mean you'll be a successful TA? We hope so, but being a successful teacher means you also use the impactful teaching practices that we use for teaching students. So language-wise, we're not worried. Students between the ranges then of 23 to 27, we do want to see you for the test just to confirm that you are ready. Okay, for students below the 23, again, we know this from our correlation work with the data. You typically need a little bit more training and time with language skills to qualify for the TA-ship. Now, one of the slides had that information, and I've seen this question a lot, will we get the slides? And the answer is yes, absolutely, you can see the slides. So in that then, if you have a TOEFL speaking subscore or an IELTS score, so the TOEFL is below a 23, IELTS is below a 7, and if you've taken the Pearson test of English, great for you. It's a wonderful test. Hardly anyone takes it, but it's a great test. If you hit below a 76, then you're going to need to do some training before you can qualify to take the English test. And so if you have a 22 TOEFL speaking subscore, we currently ask that you take at least one language class. And I know the question there was, how much do these courses cost? Luckily, we can provide you with a voucher so that any additional language training you need, you will not need to pay for, okay? We need qualified TAs. We want you to qualify, so we're going to provide you with that training. For anyone below a 22, we're going to ask that you take at least 2 language courses to qualify to take the ELCE. Or, for this is below a 23 or below a 22, you can also retake the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the PTE in hopes that you can reach the qualifying score. As you all know, and as I know, I have worked with ETS, so you can take the TOEFL every 12 days. So that's a multiple test opportunity. Do we want you to have to do that? No. But it's another way you can try to qualify to take the ELCE, okay? And the deadline, somebody's asked about a deadline for submitting TOEFL scores. Well, hopefully that deadline has already been met for your candidacy as a grad student. However, to retest with the TOEFL, there is a deadline, and that deadline is right now in July for a fall TA-ship. And that's because your faculty are going to be going through thousands of applications for these positions. So we need to have your most recent score as soon as possible. Okay, remember, every 12 days you can take the TOEFL. And other than that, it will be in week 6 of winter, spring, and summer quarters when you, so a month before the quarter you hope to qualify to TA. I know it's complicated, but we'll get you there. So another person has asked, my speaking score is between 23 and 27. Can I get a TA-ship in my first quarter? You know, that depends. First, we respect the department's requirements. If you're a master's student, the department may not let you TA until winter quarter. So you have to check with your department on their requirements. For me, as the providing the language assessment, if you fall within the 23 to 27 and the department says they hope to hire you if you qualify, then they send me your name. I don't choose. The department will contact you. Okay. And I will now hand the mic over to Erilyn so she can answer questions about the TA training.
So one clarification is someone had asked about whether this applies to RA-ships or research assistantships as well. My understanding is that it does not, which is somewhat unfortunate because you do need to be able to talk about research as well as talk about teaching, but I don't believe there's a similar requirement. And in this case, we're really just talking about if you're going to be a teaching assistant. Someone asked about the difference in responsibilities between TA, tutor, and grader. That's a great question. So although it can vary a little bit between departments, generally a TA is going to be actually directly teaching a discussion section or a lab section. So you'll be, potentially standing in front of a class of students and working with all of them at once in these smaller sections, separate from the lecture that they'll attend for class. A tutor tends to be working with students more on a one-to-one or a one-to-small group basis. So this might be in some departments have like a tutoring center that you'd be in. Others, it would be holding what are called office hours, which is basically a time for students, a dedicated time where you will be available for students to come ask questions of you or to come learn more about a certain topic, get clarification, etc. A grader is going to be basically what it says, and this is also called a reader. They're literally just grading papers usually, or grading exams, grading quizzes. So not too much student interaction. But typically, if you're a tutor, or grader, or reader, you often end up being a TA at some point. It just sort of depends on your department. And there. Yeah, a lot of this might be more department specific. Gabby, are you seeing any that you'd like to ask us? Oh, in terms of where to apply, often it's listed on departmental websites, I believe. I don't remember the web. Is it ASES. Basically, Google UCSD and ASES, and you'll find a website that often has positions there as well. But that is pretty departmental specific.
Right. The department usually has the link directly to their own position.
I don't know if you could hear that in the mic, but the department often will have a link to their own positions on their website as well.
So we have a question about students from Canada. If you are from Quebec, then, and if you score in the 23 to 27 range to qualify, then I may see you for the test. So yes, otherwise we look to our neighbors in the north, Canada, and we know you do speak English too. So we would just enjoy the Canadian vowel accent among our American English accent. So it's strictly for Quebec. And really it is, this test is a technicality. We want to test people who have the highest likelihood to pass because we don't like to fail students. So know that we really do want it to go well for everyone. I've had a lot of questions about CSE. As we have mentioned throughout this webinar, departments may have very specific requirements that only that department has. The Computer Science and Engineering department works very hard to identify the best candidates to TA. I did a pilot study with them. It is specific to CSE. Their score range to automatically qualify to TA is not 28 to 30. It is 26 to 30. Okay, so we did work on that. It is not campus-wide. So this is currently the situation. If you apply to CSE, and you have a 26 speaking subscore, they will not test you, okay? So that's with CSE. Other departments, it's still a 28 to 30. This decision has not been made campus-wide. Yes, so we had another great question. The student is one department, but wants to TA in a different department. This happens a lot. Please feel free to apply for those positions that, one, you think it would be a great experience to teach in that department, and two, you feel you have the content knowledge qualifications. Many of our engineering students apply to TA in physics. They apply to TA in math, but math has very specific requirements. You need to check them out. Okay, so I've met many students TAing across different disciplines. In computer science, many of those students like to TA in cognitive science. So please know that you're not restricted to TA in your own department, okay?
And if I can add on that, if you are applying to a department that's not your own, and maybe you have special skill sets that would make you really good in that department, if they allow you to upload a cover letter or anything like that, then explain that. Give that information and, you know, make it specific to that department. A uniform cover letter is not going to get you very far, let's be honest. But if you can show that you're really interested in that department, you're going to get much different consideration than if you're just one name of many. So that's just sort of, I guess, an insider tip is, you know, make it specific to that department. Tell them why you would be a good fit there. As far as, can I look for positions and apply now? I don't know. I think applications are maybe open for the fall.
Yeah.
They are? Okay. Excellent. So applications are open for the fall. Again, look for ones that you would be a good fit for. There's another question about whether applying or saying you'd be a good fit for advanced courses would affect your chances of getting an offer from an easier course. That's going to be very department specific. That might, if you're in touch with any grad students within your department, that might be something to ask them if they have experience with that. I can't imagine that that would have a huge influence. But
one thing I want to follow up on what Erilyn just said about applying as a professional would for any position. It is also, if you have been a TA, and if you have TA evaluations, by all means include those TA evaluations. This helps us make decisions far more easily than if you give us nothing. So remember, becoming a graduate student means you are a professional. It's what I would have to provide as an applicant for a job, my work history, what I've done, any letters of recommendation, my evaluations. All of this helps us to make easy, quick decisions, and especially if you can provide us this information.
someone had a question.
Yes.
Whether if they fall into the range where they'll have to take the test, if they can still apply to TA.
Oh, great question. Yes, you can still apply for TA positions. Just know that some departments, and so if that's your department, that department may guide you very specifically with their own recommendation for when to apply. But there is, if you want to apply, there's no harm in applying. But the department will tell you, I know computer science is very specific with their master's students and guiding them to make a decision about when to apply. So you really do need to work with your department. But at this point, if the positions are open, you practice applying, okay? There's no harm in trying.
So there are a couple of questions just about the recording of this webinar. I just wanted to let everybody know that this is being recorded, including this question and answer session, and it will be sent to you via email as well as posted on our website. I know we held, of course, this is one in a series of webinars we've hosted. We've sent out links to our previous webinars, but we have had some issues with those recordings. So right now we are editing those recordings and reposting those and resending them to all new graduate students. So do know those are on their way to you soon, so you can view all previous webinars, including this one as well.
So Martha, another question has come up, whether there's, well, first of all, difference between reader and tutor, at least according to the job card, a tutor would be working with students either one-on-one or in a small group, potentially during office hours. A reader would really be strictly grading or helping with that sort of thing. But Martha, does a grader or a reader need to take the test, the language test?
Great question, and thank you, Erilyn. The answer is, if you are a reader or a grader, you will not be interacting with speech with a student. Therefore, you can accept an offer to be a reader or a grader. I cannot guarantee it is as fun as teaching students live, but it will support you. So yes, the answer is you can accept an offer.
Also, someone asked about instructional apprenticeship. Great question. For your sake, don't worry about it. Assume it's a TA-ship. There's certain departments that have a course that you take while you're TAing or while you're doing TA duties. And because of the structure of everything, and TAs are protected by a union here, which is good because it limits how many hours you can be asked to work, etc. They have to change the name of it. So really assume instructional apprenticeship is the same as TA-ship in terms of job duties. And again, for applying, look on departmental websites. It's probably your best bet for finding those positions. There's a number of questions about RA-ships, and while they're great questions, they are outside of the scope of our knowledge set. So we'll defer those to other, I don't know if there's going to be anything about, not specific about RA-ships. So I would suggest contacting your department in that case, maybe your supervisor or someone you've been in contact with, or your graduate coordinator might have some good information on RA-ships. So can you earn credits by doing a TA-ship? It depends. Some departments do have that set up where, again, you take a course, for instance, biology, chemistry, physics, CSE, a few others have a program or a course that you're actually learning teaching strategies and really great courses for teaching while you're TAing for the first time. So in that case, you would be getting credit.
So there's a question about whether there's a fee waiver policy for readers. I would recommend taking a look at our previous webinar that we had with the graduate division that specifically focused on graduate student funding and employment on campus. It goes into the details of fee waivers, non-resident fee and fees and such. So again, that link will be sent out to all students, and that information was gone over in that webinar from a couple of weeks ago.
And this is Martha again. There was one question about the TA application and knowing how to increase your chances of getting an offer by prioritizing or setting your preference for which course you would like to be a TA for. This is how it works. When you apply, you set the preference for the course you would be most qualified and most comfortable teaching. In the reviews, they're going to look at your course history and any previous job experience. So your selection is going to be according to where you're most qualified to be. So it's not necessarily an advanced course. Here we call them upper division courses. It could be a lower division course. It all depends on need and the faculty that choose. So apply for what you want. That's my best advice.
I had one that I was going to answer, and now I'm completely blanking on what it was. But until I find that, I was going to mention some folks have asked, you know, if you're exempt from taking the test, are you okay to just go ahead and TA? Technically, yes. You still have to be selected and chosen for that TA-ship. So again, doing what you can to make yourself a top candidate for that. So applying to the courses that you would be a best fit for. A few departments, maybe all. I know CSE allows you to upload a short video segments of you teaching. Take advantage of that. From someone who has hired TAs before, or looked at a ton of applications, having those little things can really make you stand out and let them picture who you would be teaching their classes and working with their undergrads. And again, making it specific. Don't do a blanket application across 20 departments, applying to something that has no fit for you. You're going to be just one of many applicants then. So make the case for why you would be good for that department. We have 1 minute left, so if anyone has a last minute burning question, go ahead and ask. Generally, by which semester do grad students get a TA-ship? I don't know.
Well, first of all, welcome to the quarter system. We are not a semester system. So it depends on the department. Again, these are things you need to confirm with your department. Some departments have a need in fall quarter. Others, for example, going back to computer science, if you're a PhD student, you have 1 quarter of teaching required. You can do that the last quarter of your last year as a PhD student. So there's, it's a different requirement for every department. If you want a TA right away, though, that will be up to the department that you apply to, whether they take you in your fall quarter. So.
And for those questions not related to TA-ships, I'm sure that Gabby will probably be answering those later.
Yeah, so there was one question that came through, actually had to do with the webinar earlier that talked about health requirements, and I know I mentioned that in the reminders section of this presentation. So I mentioned that the deadline for the tuberculosis requirement was July 15th, and I should clarify that the deadline is July 15th to submit your tuberculosis information. Your vaccination information, so that is all your immunizations, is November 1st. So you do have a little bit more time to submit those. Health Services just wants to make sure you have all of those completed as much as possible before you begin your studies here. We are going to go ahead and wrap up the webinar because we are out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank all of you for asking some great questions. I want to thank our panelists, our presenters today, Erilyn and Martha, for a wonderful presentation. As I mentioned, this will be, or it has been recorded, and the presentation link will be sent to all of you so that you can review this in your own time. So thank you again. We hope to see you at our next webinar, and we hope you have a good day or night wherever you are. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.